Okay, welcome back, guys. So we're just going to implement the part of the form for the website that goes for transactions. Okay, so now you can see I have my console popped out because I'm trying to show you um something before we dive deep into programming that. So first of all, we need to learn about the switch statement. Okay, the switch uses a parameter called case. Okay, so we have a switch and we have a case. It's like having a condition like the if else statement. Okay, so I have a simple example right here, which is this simple switch statement right here. So this statement says, first of all, we're declaring day to be one, and second, we're declaring just a variable named day name. Okay, so we're using let because these variables are dynamic, which means they can change. So we're going to mutate them later using the switch. So now for the switch, the condition we're going to check for is days, which is the first one. And the first case is case one. So if the day is equal to one as above, then the day name should be Monday. And if we check case two, then we break. Then for case two, if the day name is equal to Tuesday, then we have to print that also. We have to break, sorry. Okay. So if the day name is equal to Tuesday, then we should break also. Now the default is if it is an invalid day name, then it should print invalid. Okay. So now if we go into our console.log and we check for day name, because the day is equal to 1 on this here it says Monday, we get Monday printed to the console. What if we change the day to day 2 and that we should get Tuesday printed to the console? Okay. So now what if we give it to day 21? What do you think we're going to have? We're going to have invalid and undefined. Okay. So that is because we set invalid to this point right here. Let's leave it as day one. So we're going to be using this switch statement for our conditions and checking for if it's going to be a deposit, if it's going to be a withdrawal, and if it's going to be a um a transfer. So we're still going to keep this right here. We're going to edit this code. So first of all, we need to implement something called um a transaction make transaction function. Okay, so you know how to create a function in JavaScript by now. You should know. Just say function and make transaction. Okay, so this is our function. Now what do we want to do first of all before jumping into the switch statement? First of all, we want to save in two variables, and the first is the transaction type and the second is the amount. So how are we going to get this valuable these variables? So first of all, I'm going to check here the transaction type, which is coming from this which is coming from the form, is coming from this transaction type right here. And second of all, we're going to be checking for the value, the amount, and so let's go const transaction type. So we're going to use the DOM. From the DOM, we're going to access the ID of transaction type. So oops, that get. Now let's copy this from here. Okay, so if you ensure you wrote this code properly, this line of code right here, then if you save here, your page is not going to reload and log you out. Okay, so you're going to be logged in. So make sure this line of code is accurate, and also this line of code is also accurate because here we're going to set the value of your login, okay, into the local storage. So your login details are going to be stored in the local storage, which is not going to log you out when you reload. Okay, I just need to mention that because sometimes if you don't get it right, if you reload the page, all your details will be lost and you'll be logged out. Okay, so let's go back. So we already have the transaction type. We just want to extract the value. The value is what was selected. Okay, from the switch, from the box, sorry, the select box. I'm going to have three items, so whatever I selected is the value. Either it is deposit, either it is withdrawal, or either it is transfer. So next we need to get the amount, and the amount is whatever you type right in here. So now we're going to just say const amount, and we're going to still get it by ID. And what is the ID? ID is amount. Okay, get element by get element by ID. Excuse me. Document, and fix it right here. Amount. Now we're going to also get the value fit. Okay, so first of all, we're going to check for something really important. So if it's none, which means if it's none means it's not a number. Okay, so if someone comes here and inputs something that is not a number, then we're not going to continue with the transaction. Okay, so if the user inputs something that is not a number, and we're checking that for an amount, okay, which is the amount now is what we just got from the DOM using the document get element by ID to select the natural DOM element, which is the natural HTML. So now we're going to check it now using JavaScript. So if whatever is imputed here is not a number, we're not going to proceed. Also, if the amount is greater than, I'm sorry, it's lesser than 0, because that is what makes sense. So if it's lesser than 0, we're going to also not proceed. And what should we do? I want to send in, you can call this a guide plus. I'll tell you why. Alert and say, let's just say, please enter a valid amount. Okay, right. So we say return. Okay, so this is just a guard clause. It's just a guard. It's just here to guard this code, meaning that whenever this requirements are not met, if it is not a number, if you input your name there, or if the amount is less than 0, it's just going to return. It's not going to allow the code to go further, and it's going to give you a message that please enter a valid amount, and the code is not going to run. That is why it's called guard clause. Okay, so now we need to go on with our switch statement. So I'm just going to get this switch statement in here, and I'm going to edit it. Okay, I'm going to take it off here. So I'm going to edit this one. I'm going to edit this one. Now we need to put in our switch statement, not the day this time, but the transaction type, which is this above. So if it is a deposit, withdrawal, or transfer, whatever we get from the select menu, okay, in your PC, if you click on this box, you should be able to see the 3 menu pop up. Okay, so now if the case 1, instead of having 1 as before, we're going to use string. Before we're using numbers, but now we're going to use string because we're going to type in the values in string deposits. So the first is going to be for deposits. Please make sure it's in small letters. Okay, so if the first case is for deposit, what are we going to do? First of all, we're not going to do this anymore. So we're going to create a function called deposits. and we're going to pass in the parameter amount. Okay, this amount from here that we'll get from here, we're going to pass it as a parameter into this part of the code. So now we're going to create a function, name amount, name deposit, function deposit, and we're going to pass in the parameter amount. And yeah, so what do we want to do? First of all, we want to check the current user that is using this account. So we want to know if the current user is the one using it. What should we do? Well, we want to go into the current user's account balance and add whatever was inputted as the amount right here plus the account balance, okay? Thereby increasing the account balance from whatever it was to a new value, okay? So let us go by saying let's go by saying current user. This current user we're taking in from our login, which is this current user, okay? So now we're taking the current user dot balance, but first of all we need to make okay, let's just go on dot balance. So we're going to say plus equal the amount. So what are we doing here again? We're calling the current user, which is from this users list. We're getting the current user from this users.find. So the username and the password, if it matches this user that is in our fake login, becomes the current user. Okay, so let me go again. When we put in our login details, we get the password, the username and the password. Now from that form we check using a callback function. We search through this our list of users, okay, or an array of users. Let me not use the Python word, so let's use the JavaScript word. An array of users, okay. We check through them and we look into the JavaScript object notation, which is your JSON. We look into the JSON format and we'll look for using the find as a callback function and a callback function in the find. And what I'm going to do, we're going to use it to look for the username and the password. So if it's equal to the one we inputted when logging in, then we'll log the user in. And when after logging the user in, we check if this user now, this value in which we stored in as the user. So if this is the user, then the current user above should be equal to the user, and we store his details in our local storage as the current user. Now since we already have the details, the username and the password stored in our local storage as the user, we're going to check again for the current user's balance that is stored in our JSON format. We're going to check for it and add the amount that was inputted here into the balance. Okay, so now what do we need to do? We need to update the UI. So how do we update the UI, the user interface? So we're going to create a code. We're going to create a function and we're going to name this function again something sweet, which is update account details. Okay, so now we're going to call this below update account details. And okay, so what is this function going to do? Well, this function is just going to make sure we get access to the DOM elements. Okay, so the first DOM element is the account number, which is this. So we're going to populate this empty field that we're seeing now with what's coming from our user field, our JSON for users. So how do we do this? Let's go. So first of all, we're going to alight for the account number. So document dot get elements by ID. Now, what is the ID? Oops. What is the ID for our account number? We have to check. So this should be above right here. A field will display account number. So we have the ID of account number. Okay, so we have to copy this out. So we have a word saying account number, then a span. So this span is what is empty right now. So when you fill it from the information coming from our fake API or just say our JSON. Okay, so this is how APIs look like or we'll get data for big websites. Okay, so this is just a mini one. That is why I'm having a hard-coded API right here. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We're going to look for the text content, which is what was supposed to be in between here that we left empty is the text content. Okay, so we're going to set it now from here. Okay, sorry, let me just make my window go back to size, appearance, reset zoom. Okay, so we're going to make it now look true and get the current user dot balance, sorry, account number, not account number. And when we save, we have to log in again because we are trying to make a big change in app, so we have to reload. But before we reload, let's just do the same thing for the next. So I think I'll just copy this line down. Okay, and we're going to just edit this. So what do we have for the digits? The balance. Okay, we have the balance. The idea of the balance is balance. Sorry. Okay, and we're just going to check for the balance. So what did we do here? We say document, we get the document, the DOM element, we generate it, and we change the text content to the current user dot balance, which is this, the current user which we get here. So we're getting the username and the balance. Okay, so after getting these two fields, we log in again. Excuse me. Okay, sorry, I skipped something. I just wrote update function details, sorry, update account details without actually adding the function keyword. Okay, so these are a bit of bugs you might find in your code. Okay, and once you make a mistake, your application is not going to open up, it's just going to log you out. Okay, so let's try again. Okay, so when you log in, you're not still going to find any details. Why? Because we have to call this update account details in our show logged in user, sorry, show logged in UI. Okay, so when we do this login, show login UI, remember we're setting the form. This is the login form to display of none, and we're showing in the account summary and all that transaction history. And so we need to also update the user account details. Okay, sorry for that. And when we do this, automatically we get the user's account details popping up right here. Okay, so I hope yours work also. So now we have to go back here, and you can see we have 2 digits after the points. So always make sure you add to fixed, and you can put 2. If you want 4, you can put 4, and you're just going to get 4 digits, but I prefer putting 2 right there. Okay, so that's for that. Now we need to implement the, okay, we could also do this right now. We could implement the other things for this first case, which is making a deposit. So we could add the transaction to our database, and we could also save the user data. Okay, so let's jump right through. So first of all, we need to add a transaction. So this function is going to be responsible for this you see right here, this statement, this statement, and this statement. So the function is just going to be responsible for printing out the statement to our storage, local storage. So let's implement this now without making a mistake again for this function. Okay, now let's go into writing add transaction. Okay, so what we need to do for this add transaction, we just need to select the DOM element for the transaction list which we had earlier before, transaction list under our transaction history. This is what we're going to populate now. So what we just need to do is to highlight them using vanilla JavaScript, which is accessing through the DOM. I will get the transaction list and the list items. But what is different right here? This is we're creating a list item. We only have an unordered list, and inside an unordered list, we need a list such as this. Okay, so now we're using JavaScript to create this behind the scenes. Okay, so we're going to have list of transactions in under of list. So if I was going to have another ordered list, I'll put UL here. If I was going to have a div, I was going to put div here, but I'm just going to have list. This create elements means create elements like HTML elements, list, div, H1, H2s, paragraphs, but I'm just going to go with list for now. So does it stop there? No. We're going to now get the transaction in transaction list, and we're going to transaction item, sorry, we're going to set the text content to transaction. Okay, and now we're still going to pass in this transaction as a parameter right here, and I will tell you more about the transaction when we're calling the function from above. So this is going to set the text content to our transaction. Then we're going to append child, which is the list of the transaction item, which we just created right here. So without confusing you any further, let's go into where we called the function to see what the transaction would be. So when we call the function for the part of deposit, we're going to have something like this. We're going to have deposit of whatever amount in which we did. So let's go. So now we're going to do this using in template literals, and we're going to write deposit of dollar, then the amount to fixed of 2 decimal places, and that's all. So this becomes our argument, and it goes into the parameter for this function. Okay, so this is our parameter for the function, and this is going to go into the text content in which you see right here. Okay, so all these are going to be in list, in this list, which is the list of transaction items. Okay, so now let's make let's so let's implement the other part of it for saving the user's data. So after making this addition, we'll have to also save again. So let's go again, another function. So I'm just going to keep typing to save time. Okay, now how do we do this? Again, we have to check for the local storage. I think I'm just going to type this out. So local storage, storage. Now in the local storage, we're going to set the item, because we're saving the data, we're setting an item this time. So what I'm going to set, I'm going to set an item for current user. So what are we setting for current user? We're setting this format JSON, which is your JavaScript object notation, and we're saying the JSON should stringify what the current user. Okay, so what this means is whenever we say we want to stringify something, we're converting that thing into a value. So we're converting the JavaScript value to a JavaScript object notation. Okay, so if you hover your mouse on this stringify, you get more objects, you get more information on what stringify means. Okay, so after doing this, so we're going to make the current user, we're going to store it into our database. Now since we already made this addition and we've updated the UI, okay, we've updated the current user balance. Okay, so we're going to make it, add it back to our local storage, which is on our computer. Now we're going to loop, or we're going to, yes, from an array, I'm going to map the array and store the list content. Okay, so just to make things go faster, I'll explain the code. Okay, so now what we're doing right here is we called a new variable called transactions. Now from the array of the transactions, we're highlighting the transaction list, the children, which is this we created earlier. Okay, all these ones we created earlier. So by the time we start making transactions, they fall into the transaction items. Okay, or the transaction list, as you can see right here. Transaction list. Okay, so we'll start creating new lists, creating list. Then what we're going to do, we're going to map those lists, and that is why we're highlighting the children right here, which is the list under the unordered list. Now we're setting them, their contents, was setting it to our database also. That is why we're stringifying it while turning it into a JavaScript object notation, which is something like this, which we have above here. So this is a JavaScript object notation format, which is a JSON. Okay, so we're taking this information, which is all the transaction history, we're taking it into our database and we're stringifying it to store in our system. Okay, storing them as JSON formats so they become easier to access when we need them later on. So we'll talk about loading things from our local storage when we're trying to display our transaction histories. Okay, so let's return back to our switch. Now we'll have to remove these other cases, and the next case, it should be for withdraw. Okay, so we're going to set a function, also passing the parameter of amount. Fine. So we're still going to break, and we're going to implement this right below here. Fine. So what I'm going to do for our withdraw, so we're going to check, first of all, if the amount is greater than, and the amount we imputed is greater than the current account balance. Okay, so just check if amount is greater than current user dot balance, which is the current user that is logged in. We're checking through the JavaScript object notation for the user's balance. Okay, so add any of this that is logged in, we're checking for its balance, and we're going to check. So if it is okay, we're going to, if it's not okay, we're going to send an alert saying insufficient funds because it is not okay. Okay, so else, what are we going to do else? So if it's okay, we're going to do the same thing we did for the balance, in the sense that we're going to, instead of add, we're going to minus for it. So you can pause the video if you can do this. After just doing that, you can add this or that to it. Okay, so pause the video now and do it. Okay, so when you're withdrawing, you need to take from it something, and that means you have to get the negative value of that stuff. So that is what we've just done there. So this should be save users data, not save users date. And this should be save user data. Okay, so I made a mistake right there. Save user data. Save user data. Okay, so that should be for withdraw. So let us just cache the default right here. So default, sorry, we're going to just alert. So what I'm going to say, invalid transaction type. Okay, that's what we're going to say for the alert. That is if the user does not select any of this right here. But we also need another case for the last scenario, which is for transfer. So what I'm going to get for the transfer, I'm going to get, first of all, I'm going to collect something. I'm going to collect this value for the receiver's name. And what did we call it? We called it the receiver. Okay, so I'm going to collect the value of the receiver. Just paste this here, and we're going to use vanilla JS to get this out. Document dot get element by ID, and we're just going to paste this right here. Now what I'm going to get is the value. Okay, so we're getting the value. On getting the value, before we call the function that says transfer. Okay, oops, transfer. Okay, I don't know why I'm having transform stream. Transfer. Sorry, it's just a shortcut from VS Code. Fine. So amount and receiver. So I'm going to pass these two parameters, and you see why I'm passing the amount and the receivers for the transfer. Okay, so we can just call it receiver username just to make it different. Username. Okay, so we have the receiver's username. It's a bit awkward. Okay, it's okay like this. So we're going to implement this below here, and once again we're still going to skip to make this faster. Function transfer amount and receiver's username. Okay, so before we skip, first of all we need to find the receiver in our database. So const receiver should be equal to, now we're going to use this users.find again. I'm going to check through our users object notation, which is above this one. So I'm going to search for the username of the person I want to transfer to. Users.find. Now a callback function again. So I'm going to check for using the u dot username. So if it's equal to, if it's equal to the that is the current, sorry, receiver's name, then we can go on with whatever we're about to do right here. Okay, so I think we should use, yeah, so if it's equal the receiver's name, then we can go on with our transfer. Okay, after finding the user, then we check. So if the receiver exists, we have to check. Then we check again. Receiver, sorry, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so we check again. Even if there's a receiver, we need to know if the amount is greater than the current balance, because you can't transfer what you don't have. So if it's greater, then we have insufficient funds. But if it's okay, then we get to remove the amount from the current account balance, and we still need to credit the other user to receive the balance. Is a receiver, which is whoever is here. We're going to credit their, we're going to add to their balance. Okay, and where is it? Transfer. Okay, and yeah, that's all. So I'm just going to, I don't know why this is showing. Okay, I see why. Okay, save user data. Okay, so after doing that, we just call this update account details again. That just does this job of rendering whatever is coming from our local storage. And this add transaction is just to keep this list. Then the save user data is to save the list into our local machine. Okay, so now we can try with withdraw. So if we want to withdraw maybe 102, then you see it actually gets subtracted from our account balance. Okay, you see that we now get 9888. Now what if we want to withdraw more than what is there? Then we get a alert message saying insufficient funds. Okay, so what about the deposit? If we want to deposit, say, okay, I don't want to be wild with my imagination right here, so I'm just going to put in something sensible. Okay, so the text to test the app, please make sure you have amount here where we selected the DOM element for amount, and make sure it's passed as float. When we pass as integer, means we are going to accept all numbers such as 11 or 12 or like this. Then for floating point numbers, it means we're going to accept numbers after decimal points. Okay, with decimal points, sorry. Okay, so these are basic ideas you should know if you're going into JavaScript. So okay, now let's see. So for first of all, we already have the three cases for deposit, withdrawals, and transfer. So let's test the first case, which is for deposit. So I'm going to deposit 100. Okay, and we have it right here. We have $100. Okay, so if it's the amount written here, I'm just going to make a deposit of 1,000, and once I click on enter, notice our transaction history gets displayed. Bam. And that is because we are calling this function add transaction, that is just going to make this appear right in our UI, so in list. So if I should do a withdrawal of, let's say, above my account balance, then I should have something, an alert message saying insufficient funds. Okay, so just remove that. You're not going to see mine, but you should see yours in your screen. Okay, so sorry for not seeing mine. Now for the withdrawal, we could withdraw something, and we see our balance gets updated, and it shows that we made a withdrawal of 1,000. Okay, so let's just go back and add it. I wish it was this simple in real life. So we need to make a transfer, and inputting the user. So remember, in our code before, we made a we made a yeah, a line of code that says we find the user from our users which is our users array up there, sorry, JSON, and on spotting the user, right now we have three users, and I'm in the first user, so I'll only get the first user. So right in there, we get the username. So if it matches that this is user 3, and if it checks our JSON, user 3 is present, then it transfers to user 3. Okay, automatically. Then if I put in a wrong user, I get a warning message saying receiver not found, please enter a valid username. Okay, so if the receiver's name is not in any of this JSON data we have here, then we get that one message saying receiver not found, please enter a valid username. Okay, so now when we reload the page, we need our transaction history to be displayed right here. Okay, so we don't just need to get lost like it never happened. Okay, so to have that, we need to implement this function that says transaction load transaction history. So what are we doing here? So we are just going into saving a new variable named stored transactions, and we're passing our JSON. What does it mean to pass a JSON? It actually means to convert a JavaScript object notation, which is a JSON file, into an object. So a JSON string into an object. So we're converting a format like a JSON string into objects. Okay, so yeah, so JSON.pass, and we are taking the local storage, which is the transactions that we saved earlier, to our local storage using this. Okay, so we're getting it using the get item, and if it's not available, we display an empty array, meaning there has been no transaction done. Okay, or we could empty array for now. Now in here we call another variable named transaction list. Okay, that is responsible for displaying the list right here. So we're going back to the DOM, assessing this, and what are we going to do? We're looping through the transaction list coming out from these stored transactions. Okay, so that is why we're saying stored transactions dot for each is coming as an array. So we're looping through the array, and we're taking each transaction, and we're going into the DOM to create an element of list, exactly what we did before right here. We're doing the same thing, and we're appending it like we did before. So there's nothing new right here. The only thing that is new is this for each, which is a loop, and using the callback function for this to work. Okay, so we have the for loop, the for each loop, the while loop, and so many other loops. Okay, so you can check them out in W3 School or on MDN. Okay, so this is just what is required, and when you reload the page, first of all, you need to call it in our show UI, logged in UI, because immediately you reload the page, this pops up. So you need it to be among what is going to pop up, and here you have all your transaction histories. So when you log out and check user 3, if this was actually added, let's go user 3. Now if we check, we see we get it here, but the balance is not updated because the balance here is 1,000. Okay, and the balance is not updated, so we'll check why it wasn't. Okay, let's make a transfer back to user 1, something we can easily get. Okay, so it's successful. Okay, so it was added to user 1, so maybe it was added to user 3. I did not notice, so let us use something that we can easily detect. Okay, now we're having insufficient funds because this is too much. Okay, let's go to user 3. Okay, okay, okay. So it gets added to this. It gets added. Okay, so it works perfectly fine, and I just had to detect using the using digits that were not plain like 1,000. So you just have to use even numbers to check this out. Okay, so this is all for this project, and in case you need the bank logo, you can get that using just dragging a picture into your HTML file and getting the picture. Or you can do this, you can write an H1 right here and just call it the name you want, JJ Banking, and you save, then you get it right here. Okay, as it becomes your logo, then you can just do some style, margin. I think this is margin right. Yes, margin right, and we set to 30 pixels, and you just get a little shift from the right. Okay, a little space from the right, and that is all for this project. So if you enjoy this project, please, you can like and subscribe, and we'll be getting more awesome projects like this to fill your portfolio. So I'm going to be dropping another cool project very soon, so just hit the subscribe button, and I assure you I'm going to drop a lot of projects on the channel that will train us in JavaScript. I'm also going to drop some Python projects, but we need to increase our subscribers. With time, I'll start dropping Python projects and also dropping JavaScript projects, more cool and advanced projects. And also, I'm developing an account on Udemy, so I'm going to have an account where I'm going to paste my complete tutorials for JavaScript, complete tutorials for HTML and CSS, and also tutorials on backend programming using Node.js and also Python. Okay, Danjo and the rest. So I just need more subscribers, and I'm going to paste the links to this courses on Udemy for us to get for almost free for the first 1 month. Okay, so I'm just going to give updates on my YouTube channel and also my social media handles. So I'm going to drop updates there by the time we hit at least 1,000 subscribers. Okay, so thanks so much for watching, and see you next time. Peace.